like, subscribe, and share our YouTube channel. Don't forget to hit the bell icon for latest video notification from our channel.
Welcome to Horror Sunday Nights, where the shadows come alive and the darkness whispers your name. Tonight we step into a world where beauty hides a terrible secret. A garden that feeds on more than just sunlight and water. A place where every bloom hides a scream and every thorn a story of terror. Are you ready to uncover the chilling tale of Ellie and the garden that refused to let her go? Then sit back, turn up the volume, and remember, some stories are better left untold. But tonight, we dare to tell them. Let the horror begin. Ellie had never seen a garden like this before. The flowers glowed in neon pinks and deep purples, their petals shimmering like jewels under the golden sunset. It was beautiful, but something about it felt wrong. The air was too still, the colors too vivid, as if the garden itself was alive and watching. When Ellie arrived at her aunt's old house, she found a letter waiting for her. The garden stretched out behind her, lush and inviting, but there was a strange energy in the air. The letter spoke of her aunt's love for the garden and a warning to take care of it. But Ellie didn't notice the warning. Not yet. The roses were the first sign. Their petals were unnaturally large, their thorns sharp and glistening. As Ellie pruned them, she felt a chill run down her spine. Shadows flickered among the plants, moving when she wasn't looking. But when she turned, there was nothing there. The next morning, Ellie found the roses had grown back overnight. Their thorns were darker now, sharper, with a faint red hue staining the stems. It was as if the garden was feeding on something it craved. Days passed, and Ellie grew weaker. The garden thrived, its plants lush and vibrant, but they seemed to lean toward her, their leaves curling like grasping fingers. In the corners, some leaves began to blacken, as if the garden was rotting from within. One day, as Ellie pruned a thorny vine, a thorn pierced her finger. A single drop of blood fell onto the soil. The ground seemed to pulse, and the plants around her grew taller, their leaves rustling with a hungry satisfaction. At dusk, Ellie stood in the garden, her unease growing. Shadows moved among the flowers, twisting into vague, human-like shapes. She felt their eyes on her, their whispers carried on the wind. But when she turned, they were gone. The fruits of the garden were ripe and juicy, but their metallic sheen made Ellie's stomach churn. A faint red liquid dripped from one, pooling on the ground like blood. She couldn't shake the feeling that the garden was feeding on more than just sunlight and water. That night, Ellie peered out her window. The garden was alive, its vines twisting and reaching toward the house. The moonlight cast an eerie glow, and she realized the garden wasn't just growing, it was hunting. In the morning, Ellie found a patch of freshly turned soil. Her cat's collar lay nearby, the ground damp and dark. She didn't want to think about what might be buried there, but the garden seemed to hum with satisfaction. Ellie tried to leave. She packed her suitcase, but as she did, the plants outside began to wilt. A faint, ghostly hand reached out from the garden, its fingers trembling as if begging her to stay. The garden needed her, and it wouldn't let her go. Ellie grew paler, her arms covered in cuts and scratches. The garden, however, thrived. Its colors were unnaturally vibrant, its flowers blooming with a sickening beauty. It was feeding on her, and she was running out of time. Ellie found a photograph of her aunt. Her smile was forced, her eyes wide with terror. The garden loomed in the background, its vines creeping closer. Ellie realized her aunt had tried to warn her. Digging in the soil, Ellie uncovered more photographs. Each face showed the same terrified expression. The roots of the plants coiled around her hands, pulling her deeper. The garden had claimed them all. Now it wanted her. Ellie tried to burn the garden, but the flames wouldn't catch. The The plants hissed and thrashed, their thorns slashing at her arms. She was trapped, the garden's roots tightening around her like a noose. The vines crept into her house, wrapping around her furniture and her ankles. The boundary between the garden and her home blurred, plants growing inside. The garden was no longer outside, it was everywhere. Ellie stared into the mirror, but her reflection was gone. In its place was the garden, flowers blooming where her face should be. She screamed, but no sound came out. The garden had taken her, and it was hungry for more. Ellie saw them then, the ghostly figures of the previous caretakers. Their faces were pale, their mouths moving in silent pleas. The garden loomed behind them, its vines twisting like serpents. They had tried to escape, and failed. The roots wrapped around Ellie, pulling her into the soil. Her face was frozen in terror as the plants fed on her life force. The garden had claimed another victim, and it was more beautiful than ever. Days later, a new caretaker arrived. They looked innocent, unaware of the garden's hunger. Beneath the soil, faint faces stared up, their eyes wide with terror. The garden was patient, and it would never stop feeding.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more.